This episode brought to you by the Pirated Broadcast Network.
The inscriptions of the Great Pyramid also point to the year 2011. However, time is a relative factor. During this period, mankind slowly awakens out of its sleep of thousands of years to realize the great reality that the whole universe is alive with different spiritual and material dimensions. God would never have sown a field of flowers like our universe if only one flower, our Earth, would germinate. From the year 2011 on, prophecies predict the birth of a planetary consciousness. That is, that we will recognize ourselves in one another, that we are all different, but that we are one in spirit.
The Mayan calendar and the prophecies from the Maya is a very big topic. I first got interested in this after doing the research for Mass Dreams of the Future. And when I found that so many ancient prophecies from all around the world seem to converge on the time period that we are now entering into between the middle of the 1990s and the next 20-year period. The Mayans, I found, had a very specific calendar of a cycle of 5,200 years. And interestingly enough, this cycle goes all the way back to 3100 BC. And if you add that up to make 5,200, you find that it comes out to 2012, which isn't very far away. So that in fact, the Mayan prophecies about coming into some form of new age or some form of changing of the world seem to be headed right in the near future in the next 15 to 20-year period.
What are the prophecies of the Hopi Indians?
I was very privileged to be invited by one of the elders of the village of Hotevilla, which is probably the most traditional of the 13 Hopi villages in Arizona, to witness some of their prophecies and to see some of their stone petroglyphs that they have carved out in the desert for maybe as long as 2,000 years. Their prophecies are very long and complicated, but again they follow the Mayan example and point us to the next 20 years as a very important period in world history. One of their prophecies concerns 3 great catastrophes or crises of the 20th century. And we've already gone through 2 of these crises, and we've perhaps started on the 3rd one with what was commonly called the Gulf War, or the invasion of the American and British and other forces, the UN forces, into Iraq following the Iraqi takeover of Kuwait in 1991. So this to the Hopi was a very serious sign that we might start a general conflict between the people who follow the moon, that is to say the Islamic peoples, and the Western peoples of the world. They finally indicate that this conflict will become really catastrophic only if people whose color is red also somehow get involved, that there will be a color red involved. And I'm not sure that this will happen, but it is possible when you think the only people left in the world who really use red as their main color are the people of China, one of the biggest nations on the earth.
Then will follow 1,000 years of spiritual completion of mankind, the kingdom of peace of 1,000 years, when the masters of wisdom will appear. Until that time, not only will parts of mankind step back into the 4th and 5th dimensions, but also the cosmic fall of the Omega cycle will end. God's exhaling flows into the inhaling. The Alpha cycle commences. Everything returns to the source from which it originated. We are concluding the spiritual involution and the parallel evolution of the physical body. Our forefathers passed on this mystery in the shape of the Sphinx before they left this planet. The descending spirit of the sun, also called soul, embodied in the human beast, has experienced the crucifixion of the soul through reincarnation. After the death of the human beast, who symbolically represents the animal qualities of the human ego, man will be reborn in spirit through the completion of his ego. This crucifixion and resurrection will be experienced by many people during the following years of the apocalypse, until the planet in its entirety experiences the resurrection. After that, the marriage of heaven and earth follows. Before the alpha cycle begins, we have a non-time, when the source itself enters into us, reconnects with us, so that we have a non-time, when the source itself enters into us, reconnects with us, so that we are able to feel that we are a united being. The birth of the planetary Christ and the Buddhi consciousness. The return of the Christ, the return of the teachers of the worlds, the returning of the extraterrestrials, or heavenly master teachers, therefore all point towards this event. The planetary birth of the Christ consciousness, the neural webbing of mankind into a collective consciousness. However, until the conclusion of this quantum leap into the seventh dimension, the greatest changes will happen on Earth.
All great religions of today are familiar with the idea of a second coming. We Christians await the return of Jesus. The Apostle Lucas and Marcus write about it. He will be enthroned in the clouds. The Apocalypse is supposed to have been written by St. John, which is not true, because the essential passages are older than the Apostle John. In the Apocalypse we read about the signs and plagues that will come upon humanity. A star would fall from the sky, the moon would light up, and the heavens would roll up and unfold like a manuscript. Earthquakes and false prophets would come, and man would wander about not knowing what was happening. A group of men will finally survive the second coming of the gods, the so-called Final Judgment Day. But this is not only so in the Christian community. The Muslim community is also awaiting their Mahdi and the Jews their Messiah. Overall, this thought is much older. Let us go back to Babylon and Sumer, where we find the gods Baal and Baal, which are one and the same. In Old Egypt, we obviously find the sun god Ra. All these gods have promised to return in the far future, and since that time, the belief of a second coming is kept alive. I am absolutely convinced that none of these so-called Jesus or Mahdi or whatever we may call the Messiah will appear, but that it will be a space event. If somebody does appear, which is fine with me, then it will be extraterrestrials.
With the ascension of mankind into the higher dimension of consciousness and the return of the knowledge of Atlantis and Lemuria, the purified continents of Atlantis and Lemuria will also rise out of the oceans, because human consciousness is synchronized with the planetary consciousness. Humans who have decided to open up to the higher dimensions are beginning to feel a part of an ever-increasing learning process where life is the playground. On the other hand, humans who have subconsciously decided to remain in the third dimension with their consciousness will not feel any great changes within themselves. But we will all experience the big process of purification on a planetary level, because planet Earth is straightening its spine. That is, the axis of the poles is shifting again, and along with it the climatic zones at an extremely fast pace. The shifting of the poles has already begun. New cosmic energies will then flow through the spine of the Earth, that is the axis of the poles, and be distributed across the electromagnetic field of its aura,